My younger daughter just turned 2, and she has a saying where she says, "You love it, guys? You love it, guys?" Put down that bag of potato chips, that white bread, that bottle of pop. When I moved to Cincinnati, Ohio from Birmingham, Alabama at the age of 9, I did not understand what people were talking about when they asked me if I liked pop. I knew the sticky, sweet, carbonated beverages as Coke, or maybe Sprite. I caught on eventually, but the word never and still doesn't roll off my tongue. The bubbles, though, they tickled my mouth, and I relished the rare occasion that I got to enjoy a little pop. My eldest daughter, who you met this morning, has recently discovered the pleasures of a cold Sprite on a hot day and asks for it any chance she gets. And we explain that even though things taste good in the moment, they aren't always good for us long term. Everything in moderation, we say, and then we try to practice what we preach. I love this reading by Joy Harjo because it reminds us of what is truly good long term. It reminds us that though we walk earthly paths, we are born of a fire that is without time, that we come from ancestors who were there before time and who will be afterwards, that our spirits, though tired and tattered, can be welcomed home. And in that homecoming, we can welcome into our lives the possibility of something new. In order to do this, though, we must put down the pleasing, though not always good for us, distractions, nourish our bodies and our spirits in altogether different ways, cleanse ourselves with cedar and sage, let go of pain and worry, and make space for something unexpected, to make room for the people, the human people, the animal people who are headed in our direction, and prepare the way for them. This morning we begin this sermon series on preparing the way. We are peeking through the windows of our new home. We're preparing our hearts and our minds for the next transition in the life of this community, this move to our new campus at 2650 North Druid Hills Road. And so I invite you here and you at home into a reflective space with me now. I'll pose some questions in this morning's sermon that you may choose to take in a variety of ways. You may choose to close your eyes and let my words just wash over you. You may choose to take out something to write with and write down the questions or maybe some of your responses, or you may just choose to let them waft in the air. See what emerges for you. This is a powerful time for reflection as we prepare to conclude our wandering and find our way to a new home. And many of us have been thinking together about what we need to let go of in order to let ourselves enter into that new space with a sense of anticipation rather than expectation, curiosity rather than conjecture, awe and wonder rather than assumption and worry. So I ask you, what do you need to let go of to allow your spirit to make a new home and to come home to 2650 North Druid Hills? What might you need to let go of in your relationship to UUCA's former home on Cliff Valley Way, if that home was part of your experience as a member of this congregation? What might you need to let go of in relation to your experience in this space we call the tree house? And I venture to guess that most of us, while we are deeply grateful for the hospitality of this space, are not too sad to let it go. But let's take it a step further. And so I'll ask you to reflect, what expectations of our new home are you carrying that might actually get in the way of allowing yourself to experience the potential of that space? What expectations are you carrying that might get in the way? This springtime season is a time of new beginnings. It's a time for many of us of relative emergence and renewal. So it's a good time to take stock of these things, not only in relation to the earthly home of this spiritual community, but the earthly bodies of our individual spirits as well. Let go, Joy Harjo says. Let go the pain you are holding in your mind, your shoulders, your heart, all the way to your feet. We have, all of us, held so much over the past 2 years. And for this community collectively over the past 4 years since the move from Cliff Valley. Where does what you have experienced during UUCA's wilderness time and during these pandemic years, where does it live in your body? For many of us, even on good days, there is profound tension, I'm finding. There is still anxiety over getting sick, or those we love getting sick. Trying to balance work at home and work outside the home and homework or homeschool, separation from those we love, how much news to consume and when to stop consuming and simply hold the people of the world in our hearts. There is grief over what and whom we have lost. And so even when all seems well, relatively well, right, as good can be in days like this, on the outside, we know that we are still holding a lot deep on the inside. And so let's take stock. What are you holding in your mind at this moment? What are you holding in your mind? What about your shoulders or your heart? The rest of your body all the way to your feet. Perhaps there's some pain there. Perhaps heartbreak or grief. Perhaps even at this point there's some apathy. And perhaps it's something else entirely. Is there a way that you can release some of what you're holding? Maybe it starts with a shoulder roll or a wiggle of your toes. Maybe it's going to require a big scream at some point in some primordial forest. I get a thumbs up there, yep. Or a long soak in a hot tub. You could envision yourself in that forest right now. Don't scream out loud. You could envision yourself in that tub. But I invite you right now to imagine what it is that you need in order to let go, in order to release just a bit. As we let go of some of the pain and some of the stress and some of the burdens we have been carrying, what does it look like to call our spirits back? To invite them gently to return, to invite them carefully with kindness and grace. Speak to your spirit as you would to a beloved child, the poet says. What does your spirit need to hear? What does your spirit need to hear? And when we do this, what might there be a little more room for? Just a little more. Hope? Joy? Something else? Maybe something new? Now, letting go is not as simple as we like to make it sound, of course. As a healthcare chaplain, I encounter patients and families on a regular basis who respond to my genuine inquiry of how are you doing in the hardest times of their lives by saying, I am trying. I am trying to let go and let God because I know that I am not in control. Now, sometimes we Unitarian Universalists can dismiss such statements because we might feel that we do not share the theology of those who utter them, their understanding of who or what God is or how God acts or does not act in the world, and I invite us to let go of that. Let's not get caught in arguments of pop versus Coke. Let's let the bubbles tingle in our mouth. Because we might choose different language, but we are all trying to do the same thing. We are trying desperately to let go of our outsized human sense of and desire for control of our surroundings and our experience in a world that we simply cannot control. So how many of us gathered here today and how many of you out there need a little reminder that we are not in control? I know that I do. I see some hands out there. Are we not all in need of permission to release our expectations of how things should be, to abandon the anxiety that grips us when we try to control what is not ours to influence? And are we not all of us in need of a little help to let in and to accept what is and what may be, to let in the unknown, to let in possibility? When we remind ourselves with whatever words are available to us that we are not 100% in control, we can release some of what ties us in knots. We can breathe again the breath offered by friendly winds. We can give it back. We can make space for our spirit to return to its bodily home and feel once again a sense of wholeness and peace with what is. I am reflecting on this idea of letting go in a very particular context this week. I told you that my younger daughter turned 2 just last week, and next week is Mother's Day, and so I'm in this space where I have this unique opportunity to reflect on my own journey to motherhood. And I will tell you that it was not at all what I expected. And it required a profound reckoning with my own lack of control. At one point, I said to my husband, This is like trying to catch the wind. From the time I was young, I knew I wanted to be a mother. I hoped to have 2 children, and I never would have imagined that the dream of my desire would take so much more to come to fruition than I ever would have anticipated. Multiple miscarriages and eventually repeated IVF treatments. And I also never could have dreamed the wonder that I would experience as I build relationships with our 2 miraculous children, the ones that came to us. Nor could I have anticipated the awe I feel as I watch them grow under our care. This journey has taught me that when we release our expectations of what should be, or even what has been, we can finally open ourselves both to what is and what can be. Now, I've also been thinking about how the journey toward birth and the journey toward death have remarkable parallels. Because I've been taking lessons in death and in dying and truly in life and in living from a seminary classmate of mine, the incomparable Tolu Schuyler Quinn. Tolu died in February of this year after 20 months of living with an aggressive brain tumor. And she wrote as she was dying. She offered the world an incredible gift. Her essays have just been published in a beautiful book entitled What We Wish Were True. What We Wish Were True. Toulouse left 2 small children when she passed away, and she wrote about the pain of leaving them, about what it was like to imagine them growing up without her. I dwell with grief, she wrote. For me, she said, this is the natural consequence of living with terminal cancer and meditating on all I love. She quotes a chorus of a song by the band Florence and the Machine that concludes, give me arms to pray with instead of ones that hold too tightly. Give me arms to pray with instead of ones that hold too tightly. I am holding both my hope and my grief together in the same hands, Toulouse wrote. It is a loose hold, looser than I am accustomed to. My love is so much bigger than me. Have you ever tried to catch the wind? Have you held hope and grief together in the same hands? I would guess that many of us have. Many of us are doing so right now. These are strange and challenging times, times that try our souls and our spirits. It is the midnight of the world, in a sense. And this night that we find ourselves in is starless, and it is filled with so much sadness and so much fear. To make it through, we have to take a lesson from Toulouse and open our hands. This way of living, this letting go to let in, this holding hope and grief together in the same hands is much like flying a kite. Can you feel it? The kite in your hand, the string draped around your fingers at first, and then holding that kite aloft and hoping and praying even that this time the wind will take it, and then the rush when it does. And what do you do next? You have to let go of the string, right? You have to let it go and let it go and let it go and let it wind its way into the air, following that something light as nothing up into the blueness of the sky, sometimes so high you can't even see it anymore. But you know it's there. A pinprick of light, suspended between heaven and earth, just like we all are. Your loose hold on the string lets you feel its tug. In the middle of the night, Patty Griffin wrote that song, and Helena sang it so beautifully this morning. In the middle of the night, she sings, we try and try with all our might to light a little light down here. In the middle of the night, we dream of 1,000,000 kites flying high above the sadness and the fear. So let us remember. Let us remember and let us remind each other of that feeling of lift, of what it is to catch the wind, of what it is to send our hope into the sky. Now we'll hold on. We will hold on, won't we? But let's loosen our hold. Let's remember that we are not and never are fully in control. And let's remember that it is our letting go that allows our kites to soar. And sometimes even allows them to become something altogether different, something new, maybe even something better. May it be so.